always. Thank you so much, ma'am. So before proceeding our today's webinar session, let's have a view up to on a video representation of Agripet Global. So, folks, we welcome you all in the webinar session of Agripet Global for a once while. And at Agripet Global, we deeply understand the struggles and the uncertainties that students in the agricultural domain and allied sectors are are facing. Our co-founder, CEO Kashif Gupta ma'am, having experienced these challenges firsthand, knows the pain of feeling lost and unsupported. When she graduated, there wasn't a single consultancy dedicated exclusively to the agricultural and allied sectors. This gap left many students directionless, lacking the guidance and the mentorship they desperately needed. Agripet Global was born from this very necessity. Our mission is to ensure that no agricultural and allied sector student ever feels alone in this journey. Not just in India, but across the globe, we are passionately committed to helping each and every one of them succeed, even though India is the most rooted in agriculture and opportunities remain but the opportunities in India of agriculture remains very limited. We aim to bridge this gap, empowering students to excel not just nationally but also in the global scale. We strive to be a number one agricultural consultancy company, providing expert guidance and mentorship and unwavering support to aspiring agriculturists worldwide. Our goal is to help students discover their true potentials, align their career paths, and achieve their dreams in the agricultural and allied sectors. At Agripet Global, your success is our mission. I would like to reiterate the tagline of Agripet Global. At Agripet Global, your success is our mission. So now I would like to call the name of my co-host, Ajay sir. So sir, please hand over the further responsibilities of our today's webinar session. Ajay sir, please.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Saurav. Is it audible?
Yeah, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Saurav, for giving me this opportunity. We from Agripath Global welcome you all to the world's first agriculture and allied consultancy. We are thrilled to have you join us for today's insightful webinar on unlocking Japan study and career pathways in agricultural and allied sectors. We are honored to welcome our special guest, Ms. Vanishka Abi, who is pursuing her studies in Japan. We look forward to hearing about her journey, experiences she has gained in her studies, Thank you, Vanishka ma'am, for being here with us. And we would like to share your experiences and insights here, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you. Should I start presenting my
Yeah, you can.
okay. Just let me know if it's visible or not. I'll try. Is it visible to all of you?
Yeah, ma'am, it's visible.
Is it in the presentation mode?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. So, thumbs up. Can I start?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. You can.
Okay. So, before the introduction, I would like to thank Ashish and the team of AgriPath Global for inviting me and giving me this platform to share my views on agriculture in Japan or globally, or my journey to Japan. It's my first webinar, so I'm really excited to share my thoughts on agriculture. Okay, let's get started. So my name is Vanchika. I'm from Faridabad, a city in Haryana, a north part of India. I did my bachelor's in BTech in biotechnology from Shulni University, which is in Himachal Pradesh. I continued my studies in master's in plant pathology from Nagoya University in Japan as a mixed scholar, embassy recommended. And currently, I am continuing my doctoral in plant pathology in the same university. This left one is my picture with my lab mates. Last year, we went to Hokkaido, which is in the north part of Japan, for potato harvesting for research and also to try the potatoes of Hokkaido. It's a very popular region for good harvest. It's like Kashmir of India. Okay, I would like to share my journey to Japan. As I mentioned before, I did my bachelor's in BTech in biotechnology from Himachal Pradesh. So you can imagine a university inside hills. That was literally my university, as you can see in the picture. Is my pointer visible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
Okay. So this is Shulni University, which is literally inside the hills. All these buildings are part of Shulni University, and it's developed on a slope. So we have to ascend the slope for one class to another, or from hostel to classes, which I believe kept me fit in these 4 years. So during my bachelor, my university started a program called Summit Research Program, in which they invited or picked up some students who wanted to have a research experience or an early research experience. So I was fortunate enough to get selected in that program. And under that program, I got a chance to have an early research experience. As you all know, in the BSc or BTech, we get the chance to go inside the lab in the last year. If it's BSc, that means in third year, or if it's BTech, that means in the fourth year for thesis. But as a Summit Research Scholar, I started my research in the end of second year of my BTech. And I started with basic of mole bioexperiment like DNA extraction or plasmid purification. But as I go forward in the research, I got really interested in what I am doing and started finding out platform to share my research. So I participated in the startup boot camp in Taiwan in the university called National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. And because of these years, I got the opportunity to have some co-authorship in publication because I helped doing experiments with PhD scholars and helped to improve some papers. All these things helped me to get a good CV so that I can continue my application for scholarship abroad or in India as well. And these years make me sure that I wanted to study more in my plant pathology specifically. So when I was in my last year of bachelor's, when I was writing my thesis, I started looking for application abroad. And because it was COVID time, due to border restrictions, I could not have much options. Next was always in my mind, but because I always heard it's difficult to get in, it was not my priority. But because of least option, I had to give it a try apart from my fear. If you guys want to look for mixed, The right website is searching by Embassy of India in Japan. They have all the application documents of MEXT and other scholarship Japan offer for Indian students. So here I will explain a bit of guideline of MEXT if anyone is interested to get this scholarship. But before starting an application, I want to share some tips which help me to get into MEXT. First is to find a professor even before writing an application. That's a very first step. You need to find a professor which aligns with your interest of research of interest. I remember emailing 20 plus professors because my field is very constrained. So I email professors in agriculture and related to my field of interest. And in these 20 professors, I only get approval of 2 professors. So that's a really important steps. You have to email a bunch of professors because they're quite busy. Not every one of them reply. And last is to create a research proposal aligning with that professor's lab interest or coming in between joining your interest or their interest. And after you have a combined research proposal, then you can start having the application. Because the first step of application is to submit a proposal which makes sense to the embassy people. You will qualify that first round, and the second round is they will ask you general questions like why you want to come to Japan, what motivates you to come to Japan, or what you will do after your studies. And if they get happy with your questions, you will qualify the second round. And the third round was online interview. Because it was COVID time, it was online, but usually you have to go to embassy. They will interview one to one, or you even have to write English proficiency test. I want to make it clear that Japanese language proficiency is not required. They just want you to have a thrive to learn Japanese, but they don't expect you to learn Japanese before or while writing an application. And if you clear these 3 rounds, the last and the final round is approval by professor. So the embassy will ask the professor you write the preferences in the application, and if you don't have their approval, and for example, the Japanese will ask the professor first in which you have cited in the application, and the professor said, I didn't know about that student, or I don't have a space to accompany that student. The professor will reject your application, and then the embassy will go to next preference. And if that professor is also don't have the accommodation for you, you fail the application even though you pass all these 3 rounds. But if the professor doesn't allow the student, you will fail the MEC scholarship. That's why finding a professor even before writing an application is very important, and that what helped me, I guess. Okay, I would like to share very basic of my research. I will not bore you guys to go deep into my research. I work with mycoviruses. Myco comes from mycology, which is a study of fungi. So I work with fungal viruses. So let's look on this busy slide from extreme left. So this is a wheat crop, which after infection by Fusarium looks like bleached. And the grain inside are not edible and highly toxic. And what's the solution of it currently is the cocktail of fungicide. Believe me, it's a cocktail of fungicide. Because this infection is so strong, the fungi is so strong, or has become stronger. One fungicide doesn't work. So farmer have to spray at least 4 to 5 fungicide to beat this fungi. And we all know it's not healthy what we get on our plate. So, what mycoviruses or fungal viruses do after infecting their host, that is fungi, they either have no effect on the fungi, the fungi looks normal, otherwise, they reduce the fungal growth, or we call it hypovirulence. So, if the virus is inside the fungi doesn't grow well. It's like it's being controlled by some external factors. Or sometimes the virus increase the fungal growth, which is not good for us. We call it hypervirulence. But just let's focus on hypovirulence because it favors us. Until now, this phenomena has been used only on one plant or one tree, that is chestnut tree. So in 1990s or before 1990s, there was a havoc in Europe and America. The chestnut trees were all infected by the fungi called Cryphonecteria parasitica, and they all started falling down because fungi eats the bark of a tree and they become so weak that the tree started falling down. But few scientists or few plant pathologists, they went into the field and they found out some of the trees which has less infection. And when they did sample collection and brought these back to their labs, they found out the RNA viruses infecting those fungi, which doesn't grow. And when they put those viruses or the fungi back onto the trees, which doesn't have virus, the infection reduced. So it's a miracle. So the all not viruses are bad. This viruses can be used or currently being used as an alternative to chemicals, but only until with trees. With crops, it's not being used yet. So that's what I work on. I work with Fusarium head blight and the mycovirus infecting Fusarium head blight. Okay, so let's have a farm tour. Just leave the research behind, the interesting part. Before that, let's have a comparison of land area of India and Japan. We can all see the red outlined country. This cute one is India. And can anyone find where is Japan? Just north, east, south, west, in central to India. Let's keep this interactive, guys.
Yeah.
Even though you don't know.
It is a small map, so we can't able to find that much.
Okay.
Should be on the east.
Yeah, so okay. So that's the smallest island east to India is Japan. So it's an island, very small country. You can see by the area relative to India, it's 1/8 of India. And if we see the percentage of agricultural land between India and Japan, this is the data from World Bank, and they have put the data from 1990 to 2022. So we are fortunate enough that 60% of our land area is arable. We can cultivate well, we can grow agriculture produce, and can sustain this huge population, what we are having. In comparison, Japan has a very small area which is cultivable, where they of the climate change. The country is becoming hotter. I think it's same with India, becoming more hotter with coming years. Okay, let's have a look on major crops grown in both of the countries. So that's a zoom in view of Japan. It looks like a crescent, or the locals call it as a dragon-shaped country. Because it's an island country, the major area is just forest and rich in biodiversity. They have beautiful birds, a lot of mushrooms growing on. A lot of Japanese eat mushrooms, various kind of mushrooms in their daily meal. So it's rich in biodiversity. And I believe because of that, a lot of Japanese people like to take pictures of the nature. They are just tourists in their own country. And apart from forest, a small portion of the land is can be good for agriculture. We can see bits of pieces of red, yellow, and green, where they have can grow rice or wheat or barley. Irrespective to Japan, we are fortunate that most part of India we grow something. Even it's extreme hot in Rajasthan, we still able to grow some millets like sorghum and can feed our population. I hope this able to continue in future also. Okay, let's see the number of farmers in both the countries. We all know India is famous for its huge population contributing in agriculture. Most of our population are farmers. If not farmers, then farm laborers. It was 50% few years before, but the current graph shows that it's been decreasing. It has come to below 40%. But still, it makes a major population of India who are contributing to our agriculture. In comparison to that, in Japan, nearly 3% of the population is contributing in the farm. Here's the picture, which doesn't show that there is only one farmer in Japan. That's just a comparison of the number. Because in India, we have a huge population working in a field, and in Japan, it's a less population. But that doesn't mean only one farmer is working in a field. Just the comparison because of the numbers. Okay, here's the interesting part. Let's have a highlights about agriculture in Japan, or what's top news about agriculture in Japan. I believe we all know that Japan is an aging population. It's being on the news. So because it's an aging population, the farmers are also aging. That makes sense. So most of the farmers are either 65 or above 65 years old. We call them as Oji-chan, that means old people or grandfathers. But that doesn't mean that the quality of their produce has hampered. If you know about Japanese produced, they are famous worldwide because of their premium quality. They look good, they taste good. Let's see some of their fruits. Believe me, they are very expensive. I also need to think thrice or 4 times before buying it. So these are the strawberries. These are the grapes. That's peach. That's, what's that English? I remember the Hindi name, I forgot the English one. And pear, yeah. And that's the whole bunch of fruits. You can see the price tag on the fruit basket. If I calculate into Indian, that means nearly 8,000 rupees. They're not fruits, they're souvenirs. We call omiyage in Japan. It's really expensive. But you can see they look very nice. If you can see the strawberries, they are packed well, they look shiny, and they have different colors. They are bright red, they are pinkish colors. And grapes, they are very expensive in Japan, but they're huge, they're very big. And you can find one common factor: they don't look bad and they don't have any blemishes. They don't look like they have infection or any pathogen attack. So the quality is really very high. Okay, just a quick interactive question. I've shown you the picture of fruits in Japan. You know it's a developed country. So can you guess the pesticide usage in Japan? Is it high or low?
I think for grapes it would be gibberellic acid for production of more number of bunches, right?
Yeah. So high?
Yes.
Okay, what about others?
Then maybe it will be high.
Okay.
Maybe low, ma'am.
Okay. It's very high. So because Japan is a humid and hot country, which is very good for pathogens. They are easy to grow in hot and humid. So in Japan, they grow very fast, and because of that, farmers have to spray a lot of pesticide, particularly fungicides. And because Japanese people first like to see their product and then they want to consume it. That's why the farmers have to keep up with the consumer satisfaction. And most of the produce in Japan go into waste if they are infected or even have a small mark on it. So according to FAO 2022 report, Japan comes in top 10 countries which uses maximum pesticides in their produce. I've commonly heard in my lab that they do not eat the apple like without peeling out their skin, because even they are scared about the high pesticide content. So I was surprised in the beginning when they were peeling off the apple skin. In India, usually we just rub and eat it, and we think the apple skin is rich in fiber and more nutrients. But in Japan, even though they know it's high in fiber and rich in nutrients, they are scared about the pesticide usage. And yes, with grapes also, it's highly the pesticide usage is very high with the grape production. But recently, the agriculture organization in Japan is keeping in count of pesticide, and they are lowering down with every year the pesticide content in the produce, especially fruits, I guess. Okay, let's look at the how supermarket looks in Japan, or how the fruits and vegetable looks in Japan. So let's look from the extreme left. They are the tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, which you can see they are equally shaped. Like if there are 20 tomatoes in a single pack, all of them looks alike. Not even like single inches from here and there. They all are in good circle shape, look shiny. You want to buy them. And next are the apples. They're also good shape. You cannot find even one of them have any blemish or any spot. But the common thing in all of these three pictures is the picture of their farm or the farmer. And each farmer or the company has written a description about that produce. I know you all cannot read it. I also cannot read everything. But just to explain you about that farmers has written how they have produced these vegetable, how much percentage of pesticide they have reduced. So just to have a transparency. And even though they are a bit expensive from the normal products in the supermarket, the people will like to buy it, because some of them says we have reduced the pesticides by 13% with the coming years, or our soil is more rich in nutrients. So people are okay paying extra amount because they have the transparency. And this also gives the small scale farmers a platform to put their produce. Next, if we come here, this is a bag which signifies the GI, geographical indication, where they have shown with the map of Japan from where they have taken the product. And next is this Minute Maid. I hope all of us are familiar with Minute Maid. In India, it's famous for its orange juice. In Japan, this one is rich in fruits or banana, which is rich in minerals and vitamin C's. So this pack of 200 yen is rich in minerals and vitamin. So Japanese people, they have advanced with the current generation, because we are very busy in Japan. Sometimes they don't have time to have their lunches, so they just grab this on their way and eat this instead of their lunches. So they are nutritious and cheap and easy to consume. That's a glimpse of supermarket in Japan. Okay, I have put the current report of SDGs of Japan and India. Let's not stress our mind and just focus on SDG 2, which is zero hunger and related to our agriculture. So this down arrow shows that the trend of SDG in Japan is been decreasing. If we look in the data of last 3 years, which I have not put, but the data of last 3 years says that it was improving, but with the current trend, it has been decreased. challenges still remain. If we look at the India, it's not decreasing, but it's not improving also. It's stagnant. And we all know we have a huge population who still need to get proper food. So it's challenging are still remain. Okay, I love this slide. So what I gather while making this PowerPoint is I felt we in India as an agricultural land, we have a two big major strength in our hands. First is large farm labor, and because of that huge labor, we have a cheaper produce. We all know this, dhania or coriander or cilantro. We used to get it for free. Our mothers used to get it from free when they buy the bulk vegetable. Now they have to pay it, but still it's cheaper. I guess 10 rupees for one or two. And second is the vendors or sabjiwala. Because of them, we have a great food localization. Most of the countries, I believe, they feel proud that we have supermarkets or agricultural markets in every block. But I think no one can beat India. We don't even need to step out from our house. We have sabjiwalas or vendor every day in front of our doorsteps. So I think we should be proud, or we should work on these two major strengths what we have. Okay, so I think we are coming to the end of my presentation. So I think what we can do as a youth or part of India, that we can support our small scale farmers, because I believe we have majority of them. If I say 60% of a population are farm laborers, out of that 60%, the 50% of them are small scale farmers. So we can support them in whatever way we can. And in the end, I want to thank everyone for listening. And I would like to say, look back into the Mother Nature for solution. We don't need to input more into the soil. We already have so much in the soil which can heal itself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanshika. And the insight, whatever that you have given, will be wonderful. And we can say that from starting of your research to ending of your research, it was quite interesting, and it would be quite create a good impact on us. And also we can also able to learn a lot of things from your research point of view. And ma'am, can I have few questions with respect to research related? Can I proceed? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Sure,
What are
sure.
some unique courses or research areas in agriculture abroad that Indian students should explore? Some of the unique, different kind of courses. What are they available, right?
I believe AI is in trend in everything, irrespective of agriculture and engineering. So AI, but I didn't put AI because my research is not related to AI. So I think AI we can more look into, and plant pathology and crop science is also very popular, becoming very popular. Soil is becoming very popular. Soil chemistry. In my university, rice, wheat, sorghum is becoming very famous. Like UN and FAO, they are popularizing sorghum. Maybe in India, 10 or 15 years back, we used to eat them a lot, but as an Indian, we also don't eat it. So recently, when I used to hear some research on sorghum or millets or lentils. Sometimes I feel like why I'm not doing it, because as an Indian, we consume that every day. So these basic things which we have in the kitchen, but we forget, especially the
Yes.
spice box of India, the turmeric, the cinnamon, the clove, the ginger. So I think we should not think about the bigger project, think about the basics, look back into the kitchen. That's what I'm feeling right now. We should look back on a simple
Yeah,
one
yeah.
and
Thank
create
you
a
so
big
much, ma'am,
thing.
for your wonderful insights. And one more question, like, what skills that do you think are essential for someone looking to build a career in international skills? What are the skills required in international level to pursue an agriculture grad? Like,
As a student applying for
yes, yes,
scholarship, you mean?
not scholarship, and what are the essentials that an individual should have to pursue career in international? As
I'm still building my career. I'm a still student, but I believe should be aware. Like LinkedIn is now becoming a Insta for everyone. So I was also not active on LinkedIn few months before, but I have to get back on it, and that gave me opportunity to speak on Agripart today. So I think be aware. And what skills? Just be more vocal. Sometimes we think we are lesser or we know less, but believe me, Indians are, we can beat everyone and we have a lot of knowledge. So just have faith
yes,
and
yes,
confidence and
yeah, yes. Next, Saurav will be take over the future responsibilities
career. So
and
I'm just a
continue further,
student. So
right? Yes, Saurav, please go ahead.
So thank you so much, Ajay sir, and to our today's speaker, come expert as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the insightful presentation which you have, presented to us. It was like it was like ineffable, ma'am, right? And even though you have also did your bachelor's from the Himachal Pradesh, right? I'm also the one who is basically from who resides in Himachal Pradesh, so that's why we have the same locality as well. So yeah, apart from that, ma'am, I would like to ask him a kind of a question, and after then we're going to start our Q&A session, ma'am, for which all of the candidates have enrolled themselves in this webinar session. So, the question which I have by my side is that what those kind of the different challenges you have faced while adapting to the Japanese academics and the agricultural environment, right? Because switching yourself from Himachal's Himachal's culture and the environment and directly to the Japan, how was your challenges and all the things which you have experienced, right? So we are really very excited to know about those kind of things.
I think first of all is the language barrier, because when I start filling up the application, I did not know any Japanese. So, but because of the mixed, the research started, the master started after 6 months. So, mixed gives you 6 months to just learn language, learn Japanese in those 6 months. Whatever you can learn without pressure, without having any pressure of starting your research or master. So in those 6 months, we learn some basics of Japanese, like the alphabets or basic greetings, and after that we can communicate to go supermarkets or to train or to commute every day. So the language was the first issue, which what I faced, and second is uh, the the culture is very different. Japanese people are very constrained in their own environment. Like we Indians like to have chat anytime get the time in the lab, or we like to have small breaks, chai break, or let's go for a walk. But the Japanese people are very constrained and very focused into their work. So that was a cultural shock. Sometimes you feel lonely, because coming from India, where you have a huge family and friends, but in Japan, where everyone is busy in their own working culture. So that's two major cultural shock which I faced.
Okay. Somehow have these were the experience things which you have experienced up on yourself, but how have you overcome those kind of things, ma'am, right?
I
We
also
also
did
want to know.
I also
Okay.
start working a lot. I think I got busy with research, and I also started having more time in the lab. But that was not a good way of doing research. But soon I realized I should have a work life balance, and then started socializing with the hobby. Like usually we are so focused, just doing what we are doing, either research or a job. But I found a hobby. I started doing crochet, teaching Japanese old ladies. I have a group, or I can say a friend of old grandmothers, or whom I teach every Wednesday English. We just have an English conversation class. So I engaged myself with these social groups, irrespective of age. Sometimes we get together and have crochet, Sometimes we go for bakery classes like that. And teaching, I also often teach Japanese high school student English. Just I found more opportunities where I can have productive, make myself productive.
Okay, so thank you so much. My first not that one. So yeah, so thank you so much, ma'am, for your this kind of the explanation which you have given to what my questions. So now we have the first Q&A session question by the side of Baba Tiwari that I want to ask. I have completed my graduation in 2021, and since then I am working in an NGO. How should I start again for this, and will this gap affect my application?
Mm. This depends upon where what you want to do. If you're working in an NGO, it's also a good thing on your resume. And what are you motivated for? Like if you're motivated for education, you can find your career in education. If you're motivated in agriculture, you can still find a career in agriculture. I think working in an NGO now it's not a bad thing on resume. It's just like how you can
They was kind of like uncle ma'am. So yeah, let's leave it. So yeah, there was a question by the side of Baba which you were which you were explaining about.
yeah, should I explain again?
Yeah, ma'am. So you have given the explanation, right?
Yeah, should I explain again?
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, there was some connectivity issue. Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. So I was saying, if you're working in a NGO, I think it's good on your resume. It's just how you can put it on your resume. Because a lot of government organization are will take it as a positive point. If you want to make your career in education, working in an NGO, or if you're teaching in the NGO, it's also a good point. Just how you will put it on your resume, or how you sell yourself to wherever you want to go.
Okay. So, ma'am, what are the most innovative or you can say sustainable agricultural techniques, right, which you have researched in being the part of the Japan country?
Hmm. So recently I got a mini project where again the old farmers they have invested in some bacteria which turned out to be increasing productivity of crops. So that is what I started working with them as a biocon. We haven't checked the biocontrol, but it increases the productivity without putting any fertilizer. That's the one thing. Uh, I have known people working with oligosaccharides or these plant compounds, which turn out to increase the productivity uh, and also reduce the pathogen effect, pathogen attack in the plants. Yeah, that's what I'm currently aware of.
Okay. So, ma'am, is there any kind of the advice which you want to give to the candidates, all those kind of one who have enrolled themselves in this webinar, especially for you and for this webinar session? Will there be any kind of the recommendations which you want to give to them that why they should need to pursue the qualifications from Japan, the pros and you can say the cons of pursuing the qualification from Japan or any kind of abroad country?
I think if you're a researcher, you should find a professor irrespective of the country. For me, I got a good professor who is working with mycoviruses because I started working with mycoviruses and I got really passionate of what I was doing. So I've only was focused on learning more with like mycoviruses, irrespective of where my professor is. If frankly speaking, I didn't know anything about Japanese or Japan culture before coming to Japan. So most of the people come to Japan because they like anime or they like Japanese culture, but I was really noob about Japan. I found a good professor who accepted me So, for researchers who want to look for studying abroad, they should first find a professor who align with their research, and who is kind enough to accept them. Because you go to a foreign land, your parents are back at home, so your professor should able to understand you, and like become a father or a mother figure. So try to find a good professor, irrespective of country.
There is a kind of question by the side of Ajay
Yeah,
sir as well.
yes,
So,
ma'am.
yeah, sir,
Thank you for
please.
your insights. And I have one questions like, ma'am, currently there is a trend which is going on like AI and everything that you have mentioned earlier, right? So how will be the career in precision farming and geoinformatics areas and RGIS and QGIS? Most people are nowadays having trend of doing that. How would be the career and in that areas, ma'am?
I think there is so much career. Even I didn't learn about bioinformatics. I have to learn. So even if I look for the startups, all those news, government is also spending a lot on AI. So if you are good with those coding things, if you're good in AI, you can easily find what I believe as an outsider from AI. So sometimes I also get jealous. I should also know how to code, or I should also know how to build a drone. But if you're good, you can easily find a
Thank
job.
you.
That's what I believe. Thank you.
For sharing a 2 cents and about this webinar session, and for thanking our today's expert as well.
Thank you so much, Vansika, for coming and giving an extraordinary presentation. It was beyond my expectations, honestly, because I think this is our ninth webinar, and this was the first for like study for a Japan, like So, and it was extraordinary, honestly. And thank you so much for sharing your insight and giving information like not just about the study abroad, also about the agriculture scenario in Japan, India. And I personally learn a lot from your webinar as well as, and I'm keep learning. I think learning is lifelong process, so everyone should keep learning, and yeah. Really, really thankful for you to come here and give guidance to students. And sort of, if someone have any questions, they can even interact with Vansika one to one. Please let anyone if wanted to interact. And once again,
Okay.
thank you so much, Vansika.
Thank you, Kashish,
Okay.
for if you can get some publications, it will be a upper hand. But I know it's difficult as an undergraduate to have some publication. But if not publication, then a good knowledge of what you want to do. So when I explained as a research summit research scholar, I got 2 years of research experience. So I could explain what I want to do in future with my research. So if you're applying for masters, they expect you to have a not very concrete but still a good research proposal. It's like a mini paper, like you have to write an abstract, an introduction, results and methodology, where you can hypothesize how you will do that research. So that means you need to know how to read research papers. So if you are undergrad, you should start spending time reading papers, because that's a difficult thing. Even now we sometimes find some paper very difficult to understand. So you can start having your routine of learning of reading research papers. And if you have a habit of reading one, you can able to write one also. And now we have very good tools like chat gpt and some. You can also take help from those tools and design a mini research proposal for your future application. But yeah, basic knowledge of research will really help, if not research papers.